Oh my gosh, so many people love it. Dario, it's good to see you. Megan, it's great to see
Hi.
you. Ah, Drew, I haven't seen you in a bit. It's great to see you, my friend. Hey, Brian, welcome. Great to have you on here. Hey, Jen, welcome. Jen, you're upside down right now, and I don't know why that's the case, but it's good to see you nonetheless. Great to have you on here. Hey, y'all, this is the first time we've ever done something like this, so I'm going to ask you if you would take a moment and go over to the chat and put in who you are, what you do, and where you're from. Okay, take a moment. Just do who you are, what you do, where you're from over in the chat. That would be excellent. Hey, Truth and Co., it's great to see y'all. Glad you are on here together. If y'all have the ability to turn on camera right now, please do that. We know sometimes you're talking to business owners and they're literally driving as they're on a Zoom call. So don't do that. But if you do have the ability to turn on the camera, as we're getting going here, again, we're just going over to the chat, who you are, what you do, where you're from. While we're doing that, my name's Alex. I get the pleasure of hosting our virtual gathering today. Bryan and Shannon Miles are obviously here. They are the founders of Owner. Lindsey Sulek is here, also from the Owner team, and she's also a mentee of Bryan and Shannon's. And then the whole Owner team is here as well. So we're really grateful to be with y'all. I see them coming in the chat. Amanda Churchwell, it's been a long time. It's so good to see you on here. Welcome. Excellent. Again, if you're just now joining in, we're doing who you are, what you do, where you're from over in the chat. Bryan and Shannon, any familiar faces on here? Y'all see people you know on here?
Oh yeah.
Several mentees.
Great to see a
Thank
lot
you
of
guys
folks.
for showing up. Love the support.
Love it. Cool. Bryan, welcome. Clarissa, great to have you. Excellent. Megan, thank you. Currently work for Pepperdine and I'm a business owner.
Children.
That's awesome. Hey, Jonathan, it's great to see you, Jonathan. Didn't realize you were going to be here today. It's great to see you. Okay, next thing I'm going to ask you to do, because so often business owners in particular, which all of us on here are, don't have the opportunity to do this. We do this with our team. I'm going to ask you, what's one win, and it can be professional or personal from the past week. Okay, so what's one win, one good thing that's happened in business or personally from the past week before we jump in today? Brandon, it's great to see you on here. Daniel, great to have you on here. Again, just take a moment in the chat, one win from the past week. Also, if you have the ability, cameras on, because we're going to make this as interactive as possible. That's the goal, right? We want to make this as interactive as possible. Jonathan, sold your
Yeah.
house in 3 days over asking price. That's a win. I would call that a win. Congrats. Very cool. Again, if you're just now joining in, we're doing one win in the chat. What's one good thing that's happened? Put that over in the chat. Gabrielle, welcome. 3 kids' birthdays. So cool. Excellent. 3-month-old, and he just slept 6 hours straight for the first time. Congratulations. Flo, we have a 10-month-old and she did not sleep 6 hours straight last night. So I'm happy for you. I'm thrilled for you. Started swim team. It can be personal or business win. What's one win from the past week as we get going on? Bryan and Shannon, y'all moved your oldest into a new apartment?
Yeah.
Yeah. Boulder will never be the same. Yes.
Love that. Very cool. The two biggest arrivals to Boulder were Dion and Rainey, I think. That's what it looks like. Local operator for the first time. Very cool. That's outstanding. And Amanda is so relevant to what we're going to be talking about today. So that's huge. Had a blast with my daughter in a super rainy soccer game. Love that. Working with the Miles team on the Miles AG Ranch. Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Outstanding. Again, if you're just now joining in, one win from the past week. And then also, we're going to ask you, go ahead and if you would turn on camera, if you have the ability, that's going to be really important for today's session. Love seeing so many of y'all on here. So cool to see so many different business owners on here as well. Okay, as we kind of get ready and jump in, we kind of have spent time as a team discussing how are we going to frame this event? What do we really want to focus on this with this event as really the first gathering in space outside of the documentary and things like that that kind of happen on everyone's own time, specifically for the owner community. And one of the topics that has been just so impactful for me as a business owner, and I've seen Bryan and Shannon share this kind of theme and principles with business owners around the country now for years, and it just be so impactful, is that idea of own, not run, right? The idea that your business is an asset that you own, and it's something that you don't necessarily have to ingrain your in the business work to have an asset that can be a blessing to others. And so we really said, man, we've seen this be so transformative for business owners to where it can literally just be a mind shift thing that changes the way they approach their business. And so that's how we wanted to frame today's conversation. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put in the chat right now. So everyone make sure you've got the chat pulled up. We're going to put just like the big overarching questions that we often see and that Bryan Shannon and their team said they often see come up as it relates to this idea of own, not run. I want my business to be an asset that I own, not a burden that I day-to-day run. And so we're going to put those questions in the chat. And Michelle, let's go ahead and put those in the chat now. And what I'm going to ask you to do is check out the questions that we've got. And once you see those questions, I'm going to ask you to look at these 7 questions and take a moment and read through them right now. We'll put on some music. And I'm just going to ask you, choose the one that feels most relevant to your situation right now, that you're like, man, that's where we are at in business right now. And once you've got that number, go ahead and put that in the chat as well, because this is how we're really going to build the session and make it really practical. And we want to get into kind of the back and forth with the ones that are relevant to y'all. So if you would, take a moment, read through the questions, and choose a number that you're like, that's the one that's most relevant to me. Once you've got that, put that in the chat. Take a moment and do that right now. Awesome. Number 2. Also relatable on number 2. Lindsey, also number 2.
I mean, can I vote? I still need advice on number 2.
As part of the team, you can absolutely vote. Yeah. Awesome. Number 5. Again, we had a few people just now join in. If you're just now joining in, we're just reading through the questions and just saying which one feels most relevant to you and your business and where you're at right now. Okay, I see 5s, I see 6s, I see 2s. We've definitely got some themes in here. If you're like me, the first time I read these, I was like, can I just put all? Is that okay? Can I do that? Very good. Okay. This gives us so much good stuff to start with. So we're going to go ahead and jump in these. And my goal is going to be to kind of, for us to park on the ones that feel like they're most relevant for people. So if you haven't yet put them in the chat, go ahead and take a moment and put one in the chat that stands out to you. And then we'll start jumping into some of these. I'd like to start actually with number 5, because that seems to be showing up a lot. So the question associated with number 5 is, how do you build a team that supports the own, not run vision and actually thrives within it? Bryan and Shannon, before we actually get into the specifics of that question, I would love for y'all to share, like, what is the quote unquote own, not run vision? Like, what does that actually mean practically for a business owner whenever you say that phrase, own, not run? So whoever wants to go first, Bryan or Shannon?
I'll take it. Well, hey, everybody. Thank you so much for everybody being here. We have worked so hard over the last few months and to create an environment for business owners and a safe harbor specifically. So today's conversation is really meant for you. The story of own, not run, which is not connected with owner apostrophe NR, it's just for business owners, but own, not run, not to be confused with that, started for us back in the summer of 2011. Shannon and I were on vacation with our little kiddos in Wyoming, and I was climbing a mountain with a friend who was a business owner. And in climbing the Grand, we were near the saddle, and he was asking me questions about our business, and I was explaining, well, we own this and that, whatever. And he abruptly stopped me. He stopped me and he said, "You don't own anything." And I'm kind of like, "Yes, I do. I mean, yeah, we own our business." He goes, No, you don't own anything." And I'm like, okay, I can hear the principle coming, So I asked him, like, what does this mean? And he said, well, the day that your business doesn't need you day to day is the day that you own a business. Until then, you run a business. And it clocked me. It basically took me off my feet, because I realized that what we were doing was we were building a business that we were running, and that we needed to convert our mindset to being owners of a business that was an asset that was something that could grow and flourish, that didn't necessarily need our effort, We could lean into more people, lean into our team to grow it. And it really informed many of the decisions we made in our business at Belay specifically about how we own a business, we don't run a business. So we would think through decisions like, okay, if we do this thing as a business owner, does this make us own the business more or does it make us run the business more? And so it was just this kind of defining watershed moment where we said, okay, we're going to choose to own this business. We're going to treat this thing like an asset. And so ultimately, that's how we approached own, not run. And we had that mantra and still do. And many of the things that the other companies now that we have as well, we want to own these things. We don't want to run these things.
And mind you, the business wasn't even a year old at that point. So we were still wearing a lot of hats, much like many of you on this call. It's the idea of eventually migrating toward the role of a chair of your organization might sound crazy. But like Bryan said, it is more of a mindset and it helps inform some of the decisions that we make day to day. So we'll get into that.
Yeah. So the key thing I think with own, not run is allowing the business to operate from a place where the day-to-day doesn't require you as the business owner.
And I think, talking with your team about this is really important, and giving them the vision that you have for the business to eventually be able to function without you having to participate in every meeting, be the final say in every decision, create every system, and getting out of those day-to-day things. You have to be able to cast the vision to the team that this is where you're heading so that they are rightfully empowered to take on the responsibility that you're delegating over to them.
Yeah. So that starts to get into some of the questions. I'd love to hear just from some of y'all that listed number 5. Phil Sanders, can I put you on the spot? You said number 5. I'm going to put you on the hot seat. Why did number 5 stand out to you for like the stage of business that you're at right now? Or why was that something you're interested in, Phil?
Yeah, for sure. Happy to be on the hot seat for everyone. I'll take this one for the team. Yeah, for sure. It's interesting. I'm actually building my 4th business. But I think that the question for me in particular comes around that initial phase from more that hustle into entrepreneurship. You're crossing that first kind of valley of death, if you will, and so like in this phase, everything is you are everything. And you bring on that first probably part-time role, as you move into that space, like how do you implement this just from the very beginning? Like if you had to go back and do this, like this is something you learned on a hike, right? So if you went back, how would you reshape how you built your company?
Phil, that's a great question.
Hey, thanks, man. I just set the bar really high for everybody. Like I like to come in hot, and I wasn't planted either. So
that's right. Yeah, you crushed that, man. Let me, before we turn to y'all, Bryan and Shin, on that, could I just ask y'all, put a yes in the chat if what we're talking about right now resonates with where you're at, where it's like, yes, I recognize myself being ingrained in some of the systems because I started this business, but I do have this desire to maybe own my business as an asset, and I feel the tension associated with, okay, we see some yeses in the chat. So Bryan and Shin, what are y'all's initial thoughts there as it relates to Phil's questions? How do you do this early?
I think oftentimes what I found working with a lot of business owners, especially if it's their first business, is they don't know how to delegate. They think that it's just easier for them to do it on their own and to just take it on and burden themselves with the duty of the business versus encouraging a team around them. Maybe it's one person or it's an outsourced virtual assistant, somebody that can basically carry on those lower payoff activities that they can do for them so that the leader can stay focused on the higher payoff activities for the business. So I think that that's the first part, is that a business owner must learn how to delegate. But the trick is, as the business grows and you add more people, this is where it becomes like graduate level delegation, is that a business owner needs to go from this place of learning how to delegate tasks to learning how to delegate results. So as a business owner, when you're setting the vision for your business or for the quarter or for the year or for a project or for a meeting or whatever that thing is saying, hey, the result that I want to see here is this. and trusting them to get to the result and not giving them the 52 tasks that it takes to do that. And you start with, like I said earlier, you start with learning how to really exercise the muscle of delegation and handing off things for people to do and giving clear instructions on it and delegate the task. But ultimately your goal, especially if you want to move in this own not run fashion, is you want to delegate a result that you're looking for your business or for that area of the business.
Shannon, anything else you'd add there?
I just from a heart perspective, I really had to assign a value to my time early on. I remember, we funded our first business with our 401k. So every penny that we spent felt like precious dollars. And it felt like, oh, it's just cheaper and easier for me to do it myself. But when I got serious about looking at the value of my time and realizing that that was actually not true, it wasn't actually cheaper for me to do things like bookkeeping, email management, calendaring. It was actually cheaper to outsource those things. It helped me properly assign value to what I was doing. And it took away some of the guilt that I had of hiring early on. I mean, my gosh, you guys, we had a virtual assistant company and I didn't have an assistant at the beginning. And so I don't know, there was a mindset that I had to adopt of like, no, as a business owner, if I want to grow this thing to a place where it's beyond my ability to execute, I have to get really comfortable with knowing the value of my time, knowing the worth that I bring to the organization, and being comfortable to distill down those things that need to be done, that are important to move the organization along, but can rightfully be delegated to and given to somebody else to execute.
One thing I would just add to that, if you're wanting to know the value of your time, a really simple thing is take whatever you're paying yourself right now on an annual basis and divide it by 2040. And that's your per hour number. So 60,000, I just ran in that math. If you're paying yourself 60,000 a year, divided by 2040, that's $29.40 an hour, 41 cents an hour. So when you look at it, it's like, would you be willing to pay somebody less than that to do certain things that you're doing so that you can focus on higher payoff activities in your business? And that's, like Shannon said, learning to understand the value of your time or where you want the value of your time to be. That's a really quick exercise for you.
I'd be interested to know, does anyone, like, if you do the napkin math on that right now, put a yes in the chat, and we'll go to Lindsey as we're kind of waiting on these two, but put a yes in the chat if you're like, wow, I need to delegate some of this stuff like ASAP, right? If that's a realization that you get from that exercise. So Lindsey, I'd love to get your perspective on this. Context for y'all, Lindsey was mentored by Bryan and Shannon, was an extremely integrated founder of a business, a luxury travel company. That business then scaled, and now she's literally walked, if you've watched the documentary, she's walked the stages and is now an owner of the company, but is not involved in the day-to-day operations of the company. Lindsey, the way I'd like to frame this question for you is kind of like, what was the thing, especially in those early stages, like Phil is talking about, that was most like paradigm shifting for you, that you were like, this is a different way of thinking about business and life compared to how you were doing it before? Any thoughts come specifically to mind there, Lindsey?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I've been so interested in like seeing everyone's responses in the chat about like, wait, I thought that was just hard work, or I thought this was not even an option. So I remember, so my business turned 10 last year, 10 years ago when I was first starting this thing and I was a solopreneur and the whole thing. It felt really good to be needed. And as I built up a company around me and as I hired people, like Bryan says this all the time. He said this well before the documentary, all the time when he was mentoring with myself and my husband, Jeremy, that ego is dilutive to net worth. And it is so true. And I didn't realize it at the time, but in retrospect, I see how much I valued myself in the middle of everything. Like I wanted to be the linchpin until the pressure just grew so much that I was like, I've got like something has to give here. I cannot keep going at this level. So when you talk about like the mindset shift that had to change, for me, I had to get to a point where it was like a pressure cooker and I had so many people reporting to me and I was micromanaging everything. I was looking over every social media post. I was looking at every itinerary that went out. And that's bananas, but my name was on the door. And so there was a level of ego associated with that. Side note, if I had to do it differently, I wouldn't have started with my own name as the name of the company. That was a massive shift we had to go through as well.
Very cool. Yeah. Okay. So, well, Phil, before we move on from this question, I'd love to know just for where you're at, like, there's a couple things that stand out: delegate results, not tasks, valuing your time, ego is dilutive of net worth. Anything particular stand out as a takeaway or something you want to focus on, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, outcome-based delegation is great. Can I ask one follow-up question?
I would love that. Yeah.
Okay, so typically in a business, right, you can't afford the thing that you need, right? So typically you're hiring somebody into your business and you need results fast, which like kind of triggers this micromanagement of that person. So if you're delegating the outcome to them and then you're just trusting them and you're coaching them more than you are micromanaging them, I think when you look at just the financials of a business, what was your mentality around that? Just how much, I think, when did you choose to come in and help them, or how did you view your financials, or what did you make sure was in place in the business to be a healthy business to bring them into? I think that would just be kind of a very practical thing that would help the conversation.
Yeah. Bryan and Shannon, y'all want to take that one first?
Yeah, I mean, we always hired ahead of the curve. We always anticipated growth. And I know that is not always the right thing for every business, but that's what worked for us because we wanted to bring team members on in a methodical way that we could have that time and space and energy to be able to train them and work alongside them so that we could get to the point where they're truly owning that aspect of the business versus a tendency can be to wait because it is expensive to hire staff. Outsourcing is a great medium for that. It's a great entry point into working with somebody else and not really having to fully burden all of the employment costs that comes along with a W-2. But that was just our mindset of like, especially with the businesses that we have, we've always anticipated growth, not stagnation. And so we needed to have resources already in place, ready to go to not only absorb that growth, but to help us create it. Because we knew that we would be the bottleneck for that growth if we didn't have the right team members involved. And it's really hard to bring somebody on and overwhelm them with everything all at once and not set them up for success. So recognizing it takes time to onboard somebody, especially if they're coming in from the outside. They're learning your culture, they're learning your leadership style, you're learning theirs, they're learning what do I have to involve you in, what can I handle on my own, and those things just take a lot of time and attention.
Practically from a finance standpoint too, like Shannon said, we'd hire ahead of the curve. We would tell our finance team or our bookkeeper, hey, we need the budget for this. So get out ahead of this. And so if we need to shift money around, next quarter or the next 2 quarters to, accommodate this person, then we need to do this because we want to see this person on our team. And we got to a place, in Belay where we decided, to hire ahead of the curve all the more and say, like, we're going to hire 2 people at the same time in the same role. Because we need double the effort or whatever the thing is. But it starts with just budgeting and it starts with setting up meaningful job descriptions and thinking about them before they ever show up first day on the job and say, is this the role that's actually going to help us move the dial in our business? And, we call them key result areas or KRAs, but basically simply saying you're winning in your job and it looks like this. And then making sure that description of the KRA really is going to accelerate the business for growth. So Shannon and I always kind of assumed growth in our business, and you have to budget for that. You can't just kind of pull it out of the air. You have to plan for it. So we would budget for net new hires, as we went along the way.
And Jen, I see the question about affording executive leadership. I totally hear you on that. We're huge on promoting from within. So looking at your existing team members, and you've built out an amazing team. I mean, we've gotten to work with many of them. So identifying people who want upward mobility, who have a desire to take on more responsibility, that then you've already validated they're a great cultural fit, their work ethic, you have a sense of if they would be able to take on additional responsibilities and capacities. That's a really good way to start to test out, like, am I ready to develop an executive team or a leadership team to grow my business? Is looking at your existing resources from within and having really honest conversations with them about, hey, this is where we're heading. Is this something that you would want to be a part of? I see something in you. I see potential for growth, and just calling that out. I mean, would you add any flavor to that?
I love that input, and I definitely have been promoting from within, especially, looking forward to what we are expecting for the new year. And I unfortunately made a big mistake investing in some people that I thought were the perfect fit, perfect match to bring us to the next level, and it ended up costing me a lot. And I think I stagnated in waiting for them to reach the potential that I wanted them to reach, or I thought they had, or I know that they have, but they just weren't putting it out there. And I'm definitely soft-hearted, and I've put up with too much. And certainly have learned so much from you guys since being part of this owner group and taking your course and all that kind of stuff. So definitely doing that, promoting from within, and but I definitely need to bring in some more people that have that level that can bring us to where I see us, because I am definitely wearing 400 hats. So and so I'm definitely not, yes, I'm an entrepreneur, but right now I am still in running and not owning. So, but I'm taking the steps that you advise. It's the stress of the people. I wasn't prepared for a lot of the inflation and stuff like that happened, and all my contracts are written like a year in advance almost, and can't go back and or I haven't been able to go back and change people's contracts because that gives me a really bad name. I had to change one contract, and it was literally like she blasted me all over social media about how I was not transparent about numbers, but things skyrocketed in that situation. But so anyway, so I wasn't prepared for that, and maybe I didn't pay enough attention to it, because then I realized, oh, I'm really tight when I'm not used to being tight. As far as,
could I ask a question real quick on your behalf with what you're saying right now?
Mm-hmm.
Something you said stood out to me was that you're wearing 400 hats. Put a yes in the chat if you're like, yeah, 400 hats every single day. I'm putting them all on. I'm sure many of y'all have felt that. I've felt that as well. Bryan and Shannon, any tactical advice? And Lindsey, I'd love to get your take on this too. How do you prioritize which hats to take off when? How do you think about the order of delegating hats whenever you're like, I'm wearing all of them right now?
Yeah.
Who wants to start this one, right?
I'll just give you something really practical. I mean, there's a whole delegation matrix that we unpack, but you hand off the things that you hate doing first. You do. You hand those things off. For me, I didn't really care for, certain level of reports or expense reports or things like that, or calendar management or whatever those things are. But you just hand off the things you hate doing first. And you're going to be surprised by the people that love taking on those things. There's people gifted to do those things. But we have a whole exercise that we unpack with you guys to hand off or to learn how to delegate. And it's based on things that you love and things that you hate that you could be doing, that only you can do, and that others could be doing. And we walk you through that matrix, but it's first off handing off the things first that you hate doing.
So I was going to point to the same resource because Shannon walked me through that matrix 8 years ago when I first started mentoring with her. And I think, especially when you're in any sort of service or sales-based industry and you've been the lead practitioner for so long, there is a real temptation to make your first hire just a mini version of you. You just want that person that's going to get it, you can pass off everything to. And doing that exercise really helped me identify, no, you hire for your weaknesses and the things that you hate. And that allows you to actually actually build a team that's complementary and not redundant. So I loved when I went through the owner courses and I saw that the delegation matrix was in the guidebook. I was like, that actually was something that I applied, nearly a decade ago to my own business, and it helped me hire better.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to point out next too, is like it's like, okay, we've got the resource. Where's the resource is what we want to know. It's in the season 1 guidebook. So if you've watched, put a yes in the chat if you've watched the owner documentary. That's like such a cool introduction to just in so many ways, the mindset we're talking about on here. Yeah, so cool. Season 1 is the follow-up to that I would say in some ways, like the documentary gets you bought in on like a different type of life and business as possible. And then the seasons are so good at like practically how do you do that? And the delegation matrix they're talking about is in season 1. So if this is all new lingo to y'all, owner is a nonprofit, right? That no one's getting rich off of your pain is the thing I keep hearing Bryan say, which is like a really good thing because there's a lot of other people that want to get rich off your pain. So they're giving all this away. It's just a donation, and that donation supports the owner nonprofit. So if you make a donation of any amount, you get access to the seasons, and the team will put the links to all of that in the chat. But that's where that delegation matrix is. Before we move on from this topic, and then we'll go to number 6, but Jonathan, I know you own a painting company up in Washington, right? And you're like at that critical juncture right now of CEO to owner, like moving from CEO to owner in so many ways. And I thought it was interesting that you highlighted number 5, because number 5 is all about how do you get your team on board with the vision of owning, not running. So Jonathan, any other context you'd add to just like why you selected that question? Then I'd love for Bryan and Shannon to kind of give their thoughts on where you're at.
Partly because I couldn't decide between 5 and 7. Yeah, I think, I mean, this is awesome for me. The timing of this, I got a page full of notes already. And so, I guess part of mine as questioners, part of my team is also founders. And so I am pretty much bought into this belief. In fact, I'm moving 3,000 miles away. So we'll see if I'm really going to be owning my business or running it. So, but like, how do you continue to share with that team, to get them bought into this mindset? So.
Yeah, first off, awesome job. I think that if anything, that underscores the value of why we start our businesses is so that we are creating meaningful assets that other people can participate in, right? That it can change lives. And we as business owners collectively, we give people hope and we give them jobs. And so we have a big task, as business owners. And I think that just fundamentally your ability to move through, a startup to the place where you are now, it's just a big fist bump to you. So for me, I think that vision matters significantly. And I think that most people, when they wake up every day and they go to work, they want to go work somewhere with meaning. And they want to know that the work they do, although sometimes mundane or boring, is still tied to something bigger than them. And I think it's incumbent on the business owner, us, that we create a beautiful North Star for our business that gets people up in the morning and they go, I can identify with that. I want to be part of this. Yes, I have a paycheck, and yes, I have duties that I need to do, but there's something bigger for why I'm here. And that's your job as the business owner to say, like, this is why your work matters. This is why your work is important. Or, and then, fill in the blank with your passion as the business owner. And I think the more you can do that, almost to the point that your team lovingly mocks you, that's when you got it right. I remember our team going, oh, okay, there goes Bryan with the North Star, vision stuff, but they loved it because I just, and Shannon too, we just kind of got in a habit of pressing, replay all the time on it because it was important that they hear it in different ways, in writing, in post, internal post, email, video, at meetings, on phone calls, on things like this, just constantly reminding them of the why behind the business. And then what happens is when they know the why behind the business, then they can fill in the blank when you're not around. And that's incredibly important.
Could I ask an example question on that? Like y'all, mean, Belay was such a fantastic case study of own, not run, right? That y'all, and then you have now exited Belay. What I hear you saying is you had the language you use in the documentary is you had owner's intent eventually that that was going to be an asset that you and Shannon owned. But it doesn't sound like that was the why for Belay that you're talking about, that you're obviously rallying the team around. What was the why for Belay that operated for the company in conjunction with your personal owner's intent?
Yeah. So the why for Bryan and Shannon was that we were building a meaningful business for our family, and proudly would tell anybody that, and not ashamed of that whatsoever.
The why for the company was, though, we envisioned a world where every leader would have something like excellent support, like whether it was through virtual assistants or bookkeepers or marketing support, whatever. Like, we knew that leaders needed high caliber support that wasn't available before we created that company. It was all outsourced. So that was the thing that got our team up in the morning, is envisioning a world.
Yeah, it's two things, like Shannon said. It's casting vision for the business, and then it's also your vision for where you want to take this business and what's the purpose behind it.
Yeah.
But we were in a meeting many years ago with Pat Lencioni in his office in California. We had the fortunate opportunity to spend time with him, and we asked him, like, hey, how do you cast vision with numbers? Do you say, like, hey, we're going to try and make $20 million this year,
acquire 1,000 new customers,
and he's like, no, that doesn't really resonate with most employees. What that does with your leaders, and it should with your executive team, but what resonates with your employees is how you're moving the dial with the thing that you're doing. So, for example, instead of at Belay, we started saying, like, we're not going to go and make X millions of dollars next year. Instead, we're going to bring on 400 new customers. And everybody could understand that because our vision was connected to customers and supporting the customer. And see the difference? It wasn't about a dollar value. We knew what that meant. We knew what 400 new customers meant financially, but it didn't really ring the bell for our employees. So we wanted to make sure that we were articulating something that made sense for them on what their level of understanding for the business was.
Yeah.
So I'd love just to ask everyone on here just to kind of self-evaluate. So what I hear Bryan and Shannon say is, like, owner's intent is personally, what do you want this business to do for you and your family, and getting crystal clear on that. And then you've got a mission or a vision for the business that you rally everyone on the team around, that you say, this is our North Star. Let's start with the vision for the business. And I just want to ask you in the chat, red, yellow, green, our vision for the business that serves as a North Star that everyone is rallied around. Red is like, man, we don't have that. And like, we are not talking about that. Yellow is, we kind of got it, but I think we could do more job getting people energized and talking about it more. Green is, man, we've got it and people are on fire for it. Just put in the chat, like, organizational vision, like people are bought into the why behind the business. Red, yellow, green. Red, again, is we don't have it. Yellow is, it's kind of fuzzy, right? We probably don't talk about it enough. And green is, man, we've got it and people are on fire for it. Okay, so yeah, I worked for an organization once that they said, at the end of the day, you got to be willing to call your baby ugly, right? Which is an awful way of saying, like, you got to be willing to call a red red, because when you call a red red, you can make it a yellow and then make it a green. But that's incredible opportunity you have for growth in your business if you're putting red or yellow there. So then let's look at the second question now. As a business owner, your owner's intent, like why the business exists for you and your family and what your plan for your business is it crystal clear, white hot, and on paper? Red is like, no, I really haven't spent much time on that. Yellow is, it's fuzzy and it's definitely not on paper. Green is, yes, we have owner's intent. And that is like, but that is the thing that I filter all my decisions through. Go ahead and put owner's intent. Like, where are you at there?
And as you're thinking about your response to that, I'll say something about owner's intent. It evolved for us over time with Belay. I think when we first started the company, I didn't envision a day where we wouldn't be the owners or the CEOs of it. Not in the beginning, until we started adopting the own, not run mentality. And then we realized we were kind of catching lightning in a bottle, and over the years, as the business grew, and it became way bigger than us. And it also became very scary because we were on this side of a transaction and it could all have gone away. And so we're like, we have an intention now to sell this that I don't think we had during the first year or so that we were building it. So it's okay for owner's intent to change over time. And I'm looking at the panels and I'm seeing the folks that we've mentored over the years. And, you know, many of you have gone to scale the business and grow a big team. And what that ended up doing was eating into your margins such that the business wasn't serving your intention anymore. And so scale is not always the right thing for every business. And I want to acknowledge that too. Like, there's nothing wrong with your owner's intent to be a lifestyle business. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but you have to know what it is, because knowing what your intention is informs the decisions that you make about the business.
Yeah, a good example of owner's intent. We have a good friends of ours that he had a paving business for 20 plus years, and he made quite a bit of money for his family. And his owner's intent was to basically have all this equipment sold for a good chunk of money and then just turn the lights off. And that was their success. They made good money and then sell the equipment, and that was his owner's intent, and it worked. You know, it doesn't mean like a fancy story like where you sell for millions and stuff like that. I mean, that might be what yours is, and that's great if you want to do that. But it really, you have to define what owner's intent really is for you, and for what makes most sense for you.
I would love to ask another question just for y'all to put in the chat. If you are yellow or red on owner's intent, what is the biggest blocker to you being green? Like, what is the thing that you experience getting in the way of you being crystal clear on that? I would love for you to take a moment and just put that in the chat, because I think identifying that is going to be really helpful for everyone, but I'd also love for Bryan and Shannon to speak into that. Garrett, I'd love to put you on the spot, because you also put number 6 as something you're focused on too. This is kind of full circle experience. I met Garrett Fry at NoFo Brewing Company, which is the brewing company that Bryan and Shannon own, which is just wild. It's good to see you on here, Garrett. Yeah. It's like they own a brewing company for business owners, apparently. It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're very community driven.
Yeah, that's right.
Love it.
I love that. So Garrett,
Founding member. Yeah.
That's right. Why risk as the reason why you don't have clear owner's intent?
Yeah, it's a good question. We just had our 4th child in a matter of 5 years, you know, and there's a whole new world that I'm kind of stepping into. I think for my wife and I, we both own businesses, and I work in corporate, and so we're just constantly trying to maximize our time and figuring out what makes sense for our family to scale the businesses, or do we want to sell the business? I think everything has a cost, you know, and I think sometimes for me specifically, just sitting still for a minute to let things settle with where I am in life, but also, you know, trying to wrap my head around what is the cost going to be if I decide to step into this next, you know, I know Bryan and Shannon talk about crossing the chasm. That's a huge deal for us, right? Like, how do we get out of this rat race of getting to that $5, $10, $20 million number, you know, which I definitely want to do, but I'm not willing to give up my family in the process, you know? So it's like understanding the risk. So to answer your question is, I think knowledge is a lot of that, and trying to understand exactly what am I going to give up? What am I not going to give up? What is the financial cost, the emotional burden, etc. But I do believe in you know, what it means for my family. But anyway, I don't know if I answered your question, but
no, I think that's great. What I hear you saying is like, it's hard to say that's where I want to go when you don't fully know what the path is to get there and like what you're giving up. So Bryan and Shannon, what would y'all's response to that be?
Yeah.
You took a risk by starting a business. Right. You could have just as easily been an employee and not have all the responsibility of figuring out how to fund your business and find new customers and attain profitability and everything. Like, you're already somewhat acclimated to risk.
Right.
So establishing your owner's intent is a little bit risky because you don't know the path to getting there. But if you don't have an intention, you're going to flounder sounds too harsh because it sounds irresponsible, but you'll waffle in your decision making abilities. And it's one of those things where you just have to say, like, this is the direction that we're heading, and you have resources and tools available through this community, through other amazing thought leaders that are out there that will help you get to that intention. But if you are just operating your business without that direction, without that end goal in mind, it's impossible to know, should I hire for this position? Is it okay for me to really delegate this area of the business and not participate in every meeting? You know, like, without having that intention, you'll never be able to start down a path that is going to get you to where you're wanting to head.
And Garrett, specifically for you, I know that you have multiple streams of income that come in from different things that you do for your family. That can sometimes inhibit your clarity on a particular business. And so sitting down and looking at each business and saying, okay, what is the intent of this particular thing, and how does this play into the overall, thing that my wife and I want to accomplish together? I think would be very important, because otherwise it just kind of becomes like another source of income versus an asset to steward.
Exactly. No, you hit the nail on the head, right? And so, which is why I'm here,
Yeah. So Drew, I'm interested in your response to this. You said, like, the reason why you're fuzzy on owner's intent is because you feel bad. I'd like to know, that's a very simple response, so I'd like for you to explain more, but could you put a yes in the chat if any of y'all resonate with that, even in the slightest? Like, yeah, I would say that's one of the things holding me back, is like, I feel bad being clear on owner's intent, and particularly my intent being to own this business, not run this business. Drew, anything you'd elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think for me, guilt is probably a better way to say it. Is struggling from, I guess I always thought originally I was starting a lifestyle business, kind of like I would run this, I'd be the owner, I'd be the CEO, realizing as we go through this that actually I want to exit and have an asset in a business, and I want to do other things. But I'm struggling because I feel like there's this guilt with people that have come along with me, even in the journey of kind of saying like, hey, I want to grow and not work anymore and still get benefit. I think that's just some of the struggle I'm feeling of, like, I need to be there, the first one there and the last one to leave, kind of thing. Yeah. And I think that's just realizing that's some of the guilt I feel of trying to exit and kind of saying like, hey, no, you need to work. I don't have to be here anymore. Right. That's not my job. And I think because I've been here, and some of these guys I've been with 15 years, have been alongside me in this thing, and they're still going to be there.
Well, first off, I love your transparency.
Yes.
I would just say this. I got to a place that took me a couple, I don't know, 3-4 years, where I realized, like, this is really hard on us as business owners, that there is a difference between being a business owner and an employee. And I got to a place with our leadership team, we'd talk about this and joke around about it, but I'd say not everybody gets a cookie. The way this is structured in life is that we're the business owners, we put in the risk. We did the thing, we set up the idea, we were here first. And there's a reality to that employees need to understand, is that if they didn't start the idea, they didn't put in the risk, they didn't do the thing. And so at the end of the day, life isn't necessarily fair for everybody. And that's just a reality connected to business ownership, that your outcome might be that you get to sleep in the morning because you worked your butt off and started the thing, right? Versus they have to come in early and get the job done. And there's a reality to that they have to learn how to accept in life. And they do, most don't have an issue with it. And then the ones that do, you just have candid, direct conversation with, like, what's the problem here? And that way you go from a place of feeling bad about it to say, no, I worked hard to get to this place, and my owner's intent is that I'm going to continue to do this in an ever increasing capacity, or whatever the thing is, or I'm going to start the next thing I want to do. I want to build a portfolio of companies just like this, whatever the thing is that you desire. But it starts with helping them accept a reality.
And also, I think I totally felt that same thing too. Because, you build a business and we're all family here. We're doing this thing together. We're aligned on culture. We're building this organization. But then over time, you realize there's more to life than this business. And I have an identity that's separate from this business. And I have dreams and visions beyond this business. And I had to ask myself how much of that guilt was completely internal, my own perception of what other people were thinking versus the reality of what other people were thinking. And 9 times out of 10, it was my own perception. It was what I thought they would think if I made a certain decision, or my guilt. Like even our team now, we're like, guys, there are meetings and things that we're involved in right now that we really don't want to be in anymore. We don't have the freedom that we intended to when we started this thing. Like, can you help us get out of this? And to a T, they're like, yes, go. Like, we've got this. It's fine. So I think being honest with like where that guilt is coming from, and to the extent that you can trust 1 or 2, maybe even 3 team members to have an honest conversation. Like, if I move in this direction, what does this mean for you? I think it might unlock some potential for a deeper level of leadership and vulnerability with your team that maybe doesn't exist today.
And you may not be doing this, but it's one other thing I would add, and this might step on some toes for folks on this call, but that's okay. It's a nonprofit. Be careful using words like love our team or we're family, because at the end of the day, it is an entity and it is a business, and you'll make decisions that may upset them. And I remember one time getting pretty indignant in a management meeting at Belay because everybody's like, "Oh, we just love them," and I'm like, "No, you don't. Stop saying that. That's not true. You appreciate the hard work that they do in this area, but love is a really strong thing to say about somebody." So be very careful using words like that because people will adopt that thinking, and you just got to be very careful. This is my 2 cents on that.
Lindsey,
Well,
would you
Bryan,
add anything?
you'll appreciate the fact, Bryan, that Garrett said he loves that advice, is what he said. So, that feels like a rush. Sorry, Shannon. What were you going to say?
No, that's good. And I literally say that I love our team all the time. So yeah, do as I say, as I do. Lindsey, do you have anything to add to this?
I do. Drew, I'm so glad you said this because it is really honest and vulnerable. And it's one of the things that I love about what we're doing here, because these are the things that I never could say out loud when I was in the position that you're in right now. And I felt extreme guilt as I was making decisions around what does this look like as I build a company that I one day want to exit, that I want to exist without me. And the guilt I realized came from what I thought other people expected of me. And so I was having to answer the question of, well, at the end of the day, who am I going to disappoint? And all of this changed for me when I became a mother. And I realized, well, if I'm not making the active choice to disappoint a team member, I'm probably going to be disappointing my family, because the stress of the business was changing the way that I would show up as a wife and as a mother and as a human. And the cost of that became so much greater than the fear of disappointing a team member. And the other thing that really helped me in this was doing a lot of purpose work. So really understanding, like, what do I feel like I'm placed on this earth to do? And does it go beyond this business? And realizing that my purpose work is in a silo over here, and my team members' purpose work is in a silo over here. And everyone has their journey that they're going down. Someone's purpose may be to work in your business that you created because they love it and they bring so much value and it brings them so much value. And that is what they were put on this earth to do. Whereas your purpose is different. So you can't mix those two things up and let it cost you your future and your freedom.
Man, so helpful. So good. Okay, before we close out, there's a couple things that I want to call y'all's attention to, and then I want to make sure we document takeaways from this or action items from this as well for everyone. Number one is like, I really believe, and Bryan and Shannon, I think y'all would agree with this wholeheartedly, like particularly the conversation that we're having at the tail end here, I think is at the core of why they started Owner, is that there's so many of these questions that you can't really spend time talking about unless you're talking with and to other business owners that have experienced the wrestle. And it's not a hack. It's not a tactic that will solve it. It's something more close to the heart and spirit of why you're running your business. And so Bryan, I guess I'd point it to you if there's anything you want to add on that, of like, those are the types of conversations you're really creating this community for, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we started this because we realized that most business owners that we've come in contact with over, 15 years of life and working with them either through belay or through mentoring, is most business owners are lonely and isolated around topics like this. They really don't have a safe place they can go and talk about it. And we just wanted to create an environment for business owners to do that. So much so that we wanted to create a nonprofit that would create ultimately a larger community where business owners were celebrated for being transparent and for having honest conversation about the struggles they're going through with their business versus everything's just okay. We didn't want that. And so that we wanted to create Owner for a place, a safe harbor for business owners so they could be less isolated.
So-
And it
Yeah,
can
go ahead,
also
Shannon.
feel a little awkward to celebrate your business success
Mhm.
with your friends and family who maybe you're struggling or don't like their jobs or just got laid off. Like, we also wanted to create a community where you could bring your wins and there would be no nice for yous, because that doesn't exist in the wild either. So we want it to be both.
And so what's so cool about all this is that Bryan and Shannon have walked this path multiple times with multiple businesses. And then one of the things that if you know them well, like one of the things they're most passionate about is mentoring business owners. And so they've now done this with multiple business owners, like walk them through over their dining room table, oftentimes walk them through what does it look like to go from buried in your business, running your business, feeling bad about having intent, to it being an asset that blesses you, your family, and your team. And so they've mentored so many people that have done this. And now, like, the nonprofit is just a place where it's like, not only can Bryan and Shannon share their experience, but all those people that they've mentored can also come and share their perspective, the principles they've learned. And the idea is creating a community of people that can really connect on these things, a community of business owners that can really connect on these things. So with that, Bryan shared this with me the other day. He's like, I am on the Safe Harbor platform every single day, checking if there's questions that we can answer. And the community is just launching. So it's like very green and very fresh. So it might not always be this way, but like now is the one time that like if I put a question in that Safe Harbor, like which is the community platform page that you get access to if you make a donation of any amount, you're going to get Bryan and Shannon's thoughts on it as of right now, right? I'm not making a comment on what they're going to do 5 years from now, but I am making a comment on what they're doing right now, and they're checking it every day right now, which is so cool. Lindsey's also on there, the whole team's on there, and then the idea is too that there's so many business owners that are starting to join this community. The crosstalk is just going to be so powerful. So as an action item out of this, if you found today valuable, I would say some of you have already made your donation because you wanted the seasons, and the seasons are so valuable just as standalone. Get into that Safe Harbor community and post a question or post a takeaway from today's session. The team is also going to share a PDF recap of kind of some of the thoughts related to all the questions, even the ones that we weren't able to get to today, in that Safe Harbor there if you want to access that. And then finally, we kind of said, we're going to do this. And then out of doing this, if people find it valuable, we'll look and say, do we want to do this again? And if we do it again, the place where we're going to share about it is going to be in that Safe Harbor community. So you just want to make sure you're in there so that you see all that. Before we go today, here's what I'd like for us to do is go ahead and put biggest takeaway for you. Like, what's the thing that felt very relevant to you? Maybe it's a principle, maybe it's an idea, maybe it's a talking point that we discussed or an action item you need to take. Just take a moment, just for your own sake, to internalize some of this stuff. What was the biggest takeaway for you? Take a moment and put that in the chat before we close out. Anticipate growth. Yeah, so good. Delegating results, not tasks. This, for the owner team too, this could be great to capture these because we could actually use these to inform the next time we do this, if we do this again, or we could post more content on this on the Safe Harbor community as well. Value of my time. Yeah, Bryan, what's the number 2000 and what? I should know this, but what's the number?
2040.
2040. Very good. Excellent.
Yeah, guys, we have a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old, and they're getting to the stage in life where we're coaches and eventually moving into the stage of being friends. And this is the legacy. Owner is the legacy that we're wanting to build beyond our family. So it's really meaningful that you guys showed up. It's nice to see some familiar faces who I can count on you to show up for anything. I'm super grateful to have you guys here. And also it's a blessing to be able to see some new faces, and hopefully be able to add value and expand this work that we feel like is our calling for the second half of life. So I'm personally, I know Bryan too, we're incredibly grateful that you would spend your time. We hope that it brought you some value, and I'm just excited to see this community grow and become something that's living and breathing even beyond Bryan and I, just like we've hoped for it with all of our businesses too. So thank you guys.
So cool. Well, Bryan and Shannon are the people that first taught me a virtual high five, and y'all were on the first ever live owner event. So everyone, virtual high five right now. Well done. Great job. We'll be posting all the follow-up in the Safe Harbor community. So make sure you get in there, get into the seasons that Bryan and Shannon have recorded, because the team has done an amazing job on that. And we'll see y'all very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Guys.